Okay, so today we thought we would talk a little bit about ritual. This is something that I don't really have much experience with. I grew up Protestant Christian and kind of background, sort of rational, kind of in a narrow way. But it's something that's always fascinated me. Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk to you about it, Ian. You have some more experience than I do and some more knowledge and things. And so, yeah, we thought we'd talk about ritual today.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll start out by saying most of what I have experienced of about ritual comes from a healing tradition in Africa of the Dagara people that was brought to the West by Malidoma Somé. Probably his best known work is Of Water and the Spirit, which is sort of his autobiography. So if anybody's interested, I would point them in that direction. Sadly, he passed away. I think it was December 2021.
Mhm.
So I and no one else can any longer study with him in person. But he did leave some students behind, which I don't even think I qualify. As a full student of his, we sort of had some tangential relations, rather than, full on teacher student mode. But who knows? These things are kind of varied. But I just wanted to bring his name into the room because I owe him a debt. He's the one that introduced me to any kind of facet of ritual of indigenous beliefs and thought structures and the relationship with the world as something living as opposed to an object to be, resourced from, a
Yeah.
relationship to be cultivated instead. Um, and yeah, I got a lot of that from him. So I just wanted to honor him up front because what he taught me has illuminated a lot of other traditions that maybe we'll end up speaking about. But it all comes through him and what he sort of brought to the West. So
Yeah, I really like that you're honoring him in that way, and that does sound very, I don't know, sounds like it's more like things to me that are more true or more real. Uh, can sort of apply to different fields. Like you were saying, it sort of opened you up to like other traditions and things. That sounds very useful and like it has a good grounding in truth.
yeah, and like like you were saying, well, maybe not exactly like you were saying, but you were saying you were raised sort of Protestant Christian. I was raised Catholic, and we went to mass on Sunday. When I was a kid, we went very often. As the family got older, it sort of became more of a holiday thing. But the mass never felt living to me. It always felt performative.
Ah,
And so I went to college. I moved out. I stopped attending church as much. And about a decade after college, I met Malidoma and I was working with him. And then I don't know, a year or two after sort of my peak involvement with him, I ended up going back to church for just to see. Just I was like, it's been a long time. Like I feel a calling to return to, the mother church, the Catholic Church. And I went to a mass and I had a very different experience of what was happening there and the sort of space that was available of you're performing communion, you're communing with the divine, and some of the symbology and the elements of the mass ritual spoke to me in a way that I had never experienced before. So that's I guess one example of like I wouldn't have expected that on paper because
yeah.
we think of like, oh well, the Christianity and the indigenous, you know uh sort of animistic shamanistic worldview, they're very separate. They're opposites, they're different. They sort of look down on each other. There's sort of a war there, and in our heads. But in my experience, it was one was returned to life by the other. And I'm, not that I go to church that often still. I could probably do better at that. Um, but I don't know, something opened for me there. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that too.
No, no, that's great. Yeah, I remember you telling me about that, and I'm so glad you brought that up. To me, that's such a I'd like to go into that more. It's funny you say that so even as a young kid, like mass was sort of performative. It was just sort of actions. It didn't feel like there was real symbolism kind of coming through.
I think because I don't want to be too disrespectful of what the priest may have been attempting when of my diocese when I was a child,
Mm,
or what the other people in the church were feeling internally, because I don't know what that was, but I
mm,
know for me, church when I was a kid, church was a place to go and be quiet and be kind of bored and read books about Joseph and the coat of many colors and Jesus and the sheep and Noah and the flood and like all the little Bible stories. So I'm doing the proper things. They had a room in the back that if you were crying, you would take the kids to cry so they wouldn't disturb the space. And
yeah.
um, the elements of I don't know the way the churches can be structured with the seating and the mass, um, with the cross in the front above, and with the priest sort of performing the ritual up front in front of the people. Traditionally, I guess before Vatican II, he would have his back to the people and would also be facing up. I never experienced that. I think that was before my time. But there's still this element of bringing the sacred down into, the bread and the wine, and then having that serve as the vessel of communion and being able to sort of read that structure as an adult and see what it was pointing to, um, because of my having been in other types of ritual that were very alive and had the energy kind of running through them, the emotions. I don't know if I want to call them emotion. They
Mm,
sort of like the energy that runs our emotions was in the space, and then that would
mm,
help the emotional run in my system. But it wasn't
mm,
just the emotions in the space. Like it was, I would say it's something different.
mm,
And then to be able to look for that in the Catholic Mass
mm,
and not intellectually, but just kind of feel my way into it,
mhm.
feel into the symbols and the actions involved. It was like, oh, I see something beautiful here, you know.
Do you think it gave you so the African ritual experience gave you new perspective that you brought to Mass after that?
Maybe partially, although I think also, trying to think of a good metaphor for this because I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's like if you try and lift something heavy, but you've never been to the gym, you can't really pick it up. But once you've been exercising, then you can pick something up. And that's not to say that one is heavy and one is light. I don't mean to make that comparison. That could be the misinterpretation.
Mm,
But there was something about engaging in the rituals, that Malidoma brought that gave me a language or gave me a capacity to approach mass in a way that was probably more the way it's intended to be, rather than just the way that I grew up thinking of it.
yeah,
So it kind of opened my eyes, and then once I was in there, I could kind of see it a little bit better. Um, but it wasn't like a intellectual orientation. I wasn't like,
yeah,
yes, I see. I'm analyzing the Bible and the cup and plate with the bread, and it
yeah,
means these things. It was just like it came more from here than from up here.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That makes sense to me.
yeah.
Do you think there's a different way that people that you could have been brought up in the church so that you would have developed that different way of sort of seeing or thinking or not
That's
thinking, but
Yeah, that's a complex question. I mean, it's a
uh,
straightforward question, but
mm,
it's like, there's so many systems that have or so many generations of relationship and cultural structures that were around that sort of given rise to the church that I was born into, and the
Yeah.
relationship to the mass and the way and my relationship to the people holding the mass and what it meant to me. I mean, maybe they were doing it perfectly well, and I was just this bored kid who was like, I don't fucking want to be here. Like it could have just been that. Um, I it there's something about relating to the sacred that requires us to be conscious of our presence in its presence, and of our relationship to it, I think. And that was something that I did not experience. Not to say it wasn't there, but I didn't
Hmm.
experience it as a kid. And granted, I'm trying to remember here back, 30, 40 years, but what I remember of my experience as a kid was one of like duty and dogma and um, we go because we're supposed to, because we have to.
Mm.
And there was never a sense of, at least again, that I picked up on. I never picked up on a sense of like, oh, we are going to reconnect to the sacred. We are going to both offer and receive something important for our well-being. We're taking care of the hygiene of our souls. It may have even been described to me that way, but I didn't feel that. I
Mm.
didn't have a space in me for that understanding to land, whether it was given to me or it was not. I don't think I would have picked up on
Yeah. I keep thinking of Rousseau, kind of his natural religion. In Emile, he talks about how his ideal student, like by the age of 15, won't even have heard of God. And his education is all about uh, the right time of development, and waiting for that, for certain kinds of teachings, and having the kid discover things and everything. And I keep thinking about how maybe, you know, um, like a simpler or sort of, yeah, more basic, more natural sorts of things, the younger you are, that, appeal to you more, and one isn't being sort of given like a lot of words, dogma, complex concepts that built have been built up over millennia, like when one cannot understand like the words one is being told.
it. Yeah. I mean, actually, no, I'm not going to go. We'll see if I can pick up that thread later. I actually want to ask for a point of clarity. You say Rousseau, his ideal student would not have heard the word God until, 15 years old or whatever.
Hmm.
Is the idea that then at 15 they would be inducted into their own discovery of what that meant for them to relate to the sacred in that way?
Yeah, maybe. So it's complex kind of
Because the
philosophy.
alternative, the
Yeah.
yes no of my question, the yes
Hmm.
no is like, or is it like an atheist thing? Is it like, no, we don't talk about God at all, and when you're 15, then you don't have to worry about it anymore,
Oh,
right?
no, no, it's
Okay,
definitely not atheist. It's
okay,
more sort of agnostic, but also traditional. So he's just kind of like, so his ideal student talking about that seems to be a way to expostulate his philosophy, which is not this, one philosophy for everybody, but it's like what I kind of think of as good philosophy is like, it's not like he's just saying it's not simple. So, but he gives you some words, maybe a concept, and you can try to make of that as you will, wrestle with it, realize it over time, and compare it compare it to other things, and then kind of come out the other side with some kind of deeper understanding of, yeah, the most important things in life.
cool.
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
but yeah,
that
it's not
matches my
atheist.
experience.
Yeah, yeah.
At least a little bit. Like I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
so you had mentioned having an interest in ritual stemming from some reading, some background you had sort of looked into it, and
Yes.
I was curious what about it had drawn you? Where was the magnetic pull to even have you say, "Oh, I'd love to, talk with me more about that." Yeah.
I guess, yeah, it's just for, I mean, I want to know more about it. To me, ritual seems like, so besides my personal interest, I think we're probably really lacking it uh, in the modern world. And like you maybe a little bit like you were touching on, I think in our religions too, uh we are sort of, and this comes from Vervaeke too, is we're sort of to gloss, we're not feeling it. So I mean, but
Yeah.
I mean that in a serious way, it's like we need it shouldn't be only feelings, of course, like none of that, but we do need to feel it. Like we do
Mhm.
need to know it in the body, when we say spirit, it's not like just an abstract concept that means not the body, not material, not atoms. It's supposed to, just like we use it in other ways, it's supposed to be felt and motivating and connecting and all that stuff. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
so I think
Yeah.
yeah. So I
Go ahead.
think, oh, sorry, but yeah, so yeah, I feel like we kind of need that. And like I was talking to you yesterday, like I think there's a lot of ripe ground for bringing it back, even in like just little ways. Like I was telling you about that Native American documentary where they just like took some like cigarettes from the convenience store and like put it next to like someone's grave or some kind of memorial or something, and just little things like that. And then of course the Vervaeke sort of idea of so much of meaning and happiness and wisdom is about non-propositional knowing. It's about living in a way where it's not about beliefs about what we think is certainly true, but more, yeah, like gaining perspective and ultimately transcending ourselves and gaining wisdom and happiness and being a better person, being a better person for others. And all that kind of relates to my personal interest of gaining wisdom, transcendent equanimity. I have had some religious kind of mystical experiences, and I think probably from those experiences, I have this idea that ritual is something like a movement, yeah, towards self transcendence and flow and lots of good things in life. If life is, we're
All
always
the
talking about
all the
life
good
as a
things.
journey.
Yeah.
And I,
Yeah.
I feel like the ritual is kind of like moving us forward. I mean, isn't it like that? Like,
That's
isn't it?
that's
Isn't that kind of what it's about?
it's interesting you say that. Let me see if I can digest because that was a very rich speaking. So let me give me a second to see if I can
It was a
digest it.
lot. Sorry.
No, it was good. It was good. Rich is a good thing. It's flavorful. It's saturated. It's great. Yeah. In fact, the book I was showing you earlier, Ritual, also by Malidoma, da, 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 um, which later on he would sort of not. He wasn't the biggest. It's one of his earlier works, and I don't think he was necessarily the biggest fan of it. He was a mysterious man, so I only know my interaction with him. So somebody else might say, "No, he loved that book," and I'd be like, "Totally fine. I don't know what I'm talking about."
Yeah.
But I do think the having just read, I just finished reading this book this morning for the second, third, whatever it is time. Um, and my guess is there is an element of almost like spiciness. It's like eating a pepper, and it's a little bit of a hot pepper. So um, it's not that it's dangerous in a bad way, but there are certain ideas in the book that could be taken a bit intensely about the relationship between ritual and the indigenous life, and then sort of the machine and modern culture and the way they relate or don't relate. Like the language gets very intense there in certain, not the whole book, but in certain passages, and I think it could lead to people being quite despairing, which was not his intention. He always seemed to want to
Mm.
come from a hopeful, joyful place,
Mm.
as best as he could while still being honest about things. That's my guess about why he sort of was like, I don't know about that book. But again, that could just be my misunderstanding of his attitude.
Mm.
But having all that aside, with that preamble, he does talk about in the book that having a regular relationship with ritual does incline one towards a healthy placement in the growth that is the universe. Like if you're a plant, you're planted well. You're taken care of on a spiritual level through regular ritual maintenance. Um, which sounds nice, but then you read some of the other stuff in the book about like what happens if you do the wrong ritual, or if you something bad happens and you could die. Like it's very there's a lot of intense stories in there that I think might um scare people away from ritual as well. And I think there's a he's describing in that book the nature of the culture in his village, which has millennia of generations of people maintaining a shrine, maintaining a social structure. Everybody knows each other. It's an interconnected web of being of people. We don't have that in the West. I know my neighbors in my building. I don't know the people, next door. I don't know the people across the way. I don't know the person I bump into at the grocery store. Maybe I've seen them once before. I may not remember. Like, there's just not that, oh yes, my nervous system knows your nervous system, and our
Mm.
parents' nervous system knew their, and we
Mm-hmm.
all, there's this like familiarity and this resonance in the body of both place and community that is built within a village structure that we just don't have.
Yeah.
So and he's pretty clear, even in this book, and more so later on in his life, because this is an older book, I think from the 90s or something. I'd have to double check. But that for us in the West, we have to find what works for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we
Totally.
we can't we can't transplant the rhythmic energy of a village ritual into the rhythmic energy of Western culture and expect it to survive. It's like
Yeah.
you
Completely.
can't you can't plant a tropical plant in Portland. It'll die in the winter. It's not quite the same as that because it's a little bit different, but it's a close enough analogy. So all of that to say, ritual as a means of flow, as a means of sort of the virtual engine from Vervaeke that that you talked to me about, that sort of generating of good qualities in yourself and in your life. I think has a lot to do when it comes to ritual, has a lot to do with action and intent in kind of an emotional way, although also intellectual, because you have to think about what you're intending, but you can't just think about you can't think I'm doing a good thing. I'm doing this for good while you're feeling scared and angry and tense.
Mm.
Like, like, here's something that kind of came up while you were talking earlier, like rituals, the way people talk about ritual nowadays, the way that word is used most often is something akin to like, oh, my morning ritual, like my cup of tea on the patio while I listen to the birds sing, right? And I think the first interpretation, the first viewpoint on that, if you're coming from a view of like ritual and you hear someone talk about their cup of tea, it's like, oh, pff, your cup of tea. You're misusing the word. But I don't think that's fair. I think what people are doing with their cup of tea is a little mini ritual. They are engaging in a repetitive behavior that is not identical every time, but you've got a certain series of steps. You put the water on, you scoop the tea out, you get the cup, you do it at a certain time of day. You pour the tea, you go to your space where you want to drink the tea, you sit and you drink the tea, and you sort of open yourself to that experience of the tea.
Mm.
And the reason, the intention, I imagine, this is true for people, it's true for me. The reason you do that is because it sort of reliably creates an experience. It
Mm,
brings an energy to your day
mm,
that when you don't engage in that ritual, you don't have that energy. Oh, I didn't have my coffee this morning. I'm a mess. You know. Now, granted, coffee is a drug, but as in most cultures, the line between drugs and rituals are not. It's not black and white. There's a lot of ritual hallucinogens and stuff like that that we could also talk about. I don't have much experience with those traditions,
mm,
and I certainly couldn't talk about them. But the idea is there.
mm,
Um, and I think that cup of tea is your an action with an intention for a hopeful result. And you don't always get the result because certain things under the surface might cause problems. Maybe you didn't sleep well last night and you're just kind of tired. Maybe you're stressed about something in the future and you can't be present for it. But that kind of ritual, that's like a tutorial level ritual, but it's a ritual.
mm,
It has the structure of one. And we can take that and we can be more intentful with it. Um, I think I am of the belief that Malidoma would be supportive of this idea. I hope. You can let me know if not. But I think something that could be good for Westerners, if they felt so inclined, would be to um, speak a little bit to their ancestors in the morning, make a little bit of offering of like water and incense or ash. Ash is a common ritual material in the Dagara culture. It's what's left over after the fires. It's a protective thing. It's an indestructible thing because it's still there. I
wow.
don't want to analyze the symbology of it, but it's just
Yeah.
it's a nice thing to offer. You can use it for protection in sort of larger rituals, and
Yeah.
you can give it to the ancestors or the spirits, the energies that you're working with as a sign of respect as well.
Mm,
And so just something like that. The ancestors in this case being not not only so much your relatives that you knew when they were alive, although they're included in that for sure, but also like the lineage that you carry. The you can even look at it as like I had panic attacks because 10,000 years ago some guy realized that if he hyped himself up about something, he was able to get it done. And so my anxiety, my nervousness is this ancestral habit that's in my genes and whatever that has built and come through time. So the genes and the genetic code is sort of the scientific way of looking at it. And from a more, indigenous or spiritual or ritualistic side, like you've got the ancestors and they have a lot of that they give you, and they have a lot of trouble that they left behind that they, would appreciate if you could clean up for them, is sort of the way Malidoma talked about it.
mm, mm,
And that the other thing I just have to say, since this is public facing, is he would also say that we might have some ancestors we're not so fond of. Oh, they did
mm,
some bad things, or my great grandpa was abusive, or whatever it was. And you could say, and he would say that like when you die and you pass over, and that's who we're addressing, the spirits of the departed. Um, you leave behind a lot of the stuff that caused those problems,
mm,
and you're able to see from a clearer, more holistic space of like, oh man, I was so blind. As it's hard being human, it's hard being in the world and the body. I made all these mistakes. I left them for you. I gave you these gifts. I want to help you clean them up. Like there's a kindness there on the other side that we can turn to that isn't um, attached to their personality that they most of which they or all of which they left behind with their body. So it's those kind of ancestors that we would be addressing rather than like, I don't want to talk to my grandpa. He was a dick. I mean, no offense. Um, don't know your grandpa at all.
no, no, I know. That's
uh,
funny. Yeah, my
um,
grandpa just passed away, just for that context.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny.
I,
No,
I
no,
didn't
don't
want
worry. I wasn't taking it that way.
to. um, yeah. So just something like that, or I mean, it would. I feel like rituals are not difficult to create for people, but they have to come from a need to engage. with something for a purpose, and you have to be careful what that purpose is. So like just because you don't want to create this feedback loop of energy based around something that is ultimately destructive. Egoic, self-serving,
Yeah.
which is not to say that there aren't rituals that create abundance. There aren't rituals that help you feel powerful. There aren't rituals that help you stand up and say what you want to say or whatever. But I think from a psychoanalytic viewpoint, if you engage, like say for example, the sort of most crass thing I can think of is like, oh well, I'm going to do a ritual so that I'm famous and everybody loves me. I'm going to engage in this so I get fame and power and glory. And on the surface, there's nothing inherently wrong with that if that's something you genuinely need, I think. But the problem is most often people come to that desire for fame and glory because they have a lack in themselves, some shame or some hurt or some wound that they think fame is going to resolve for them. And as we know with the lives of many famous people, it doesn't. Fame is a hassle. It's hard work. You can fall down very easily. You have to stay on top. You're sort of at the mercy of your audience to a certain degree, and all of that has to be taken into account. And then if you want to ask for that kind of fame, why? Oh, I have something I really want to bring to the world. Okay, well, are you ready for that responsibility? Can you handle that? Then that would be sort of the proper way to invoke that sort of ritual with an understanding of responsibility and of offering something instead of trying to take something. I think we were talking yesterday about being needs versus having needs, and I think it's another case of like, are you trying to fulfill a being need that leads to the unfoldment of your soul and the betterment of the world and your society and everything around you? Then maybe you're doing okay. At least, take small steps and see what resolves over time. But if it's clear to you that you're doing it from a place of like, I need this. I don't have enough. I need something. I don't think that ends well. And so that's I think one of the dangers, especially in the Western world, of approaching ritual in that way is it can have bad results, in that sense. And you can sort of lead yourself down some rabbit holes that on the other end of you probably won't be too happy you went down.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. So, yeah, you need wisdom, and usually it's better to have some sort of traditional context to kind of guide and wise people to talk to try to make your rituals to kind of know what you're going for and what sort of path you're going down
Yeah,
that
I
you
mean
might
that's
be going
true.
down.
That's true like a job. You got to have wise people to tell you how you call your clients to try and sell them on your product. You got, it's not much different than that, except for the ecology we're in is different, ritual and business. But you
Hmm.
always need somebody to help guide you. But I think even if you can't find that, or you know the guy you were working with died 4 years ago, and you're like, all right, well, I can't go learn more from him, and I'm not flying to Africa. Um, I could find other people, they could help me, but also there's a sense of I think we can develop our own rituals, but we have to do so from a place of humility and a place of starting by acknowledging how little that we know and how uncertain we might be of what our actual intentions are. Because I might think I'm doing it for a good reason, and then turn out, oh, I'm actually trying to hide this grief and run from this pain in my body that I don't want to face and I forgot was
Right.
there, and I'm much more comfortable forgetting it's there. And can I please just be happy and not have to feel this pain that's reminding me I have this body and this important thing that needs my attention, emotionally speaking, subconsciously, unconsciously speaking. So I think I think there's much more room for mistakes when you go slow and when you go with humility and respect.
There's much
If
more room for mistakes when you go slow, or
Yeah, yeah. Because meaning you're allowed mistakes.
oh, right. Okay, I see
Yeah,
what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas if you're going very fast and hard and you make a mistake, um then you have all of this force behind that mistake. So when something, it's similar to like, we were talking earlier about a broken bone. If you're trying to set a broken bone, after a time you can start walking on it. If you're in a cast, you can start walking on it. But if you try and, run a 400-meter sprint with a broken bone, you're in big trouble. So you wanna like start learning how to walk, see what's there for you, learn to differentiate good in yourself and bad in yourself, good in yourself and bad in what you receive, whether you interpreted what you received from the ritual properly or not. Like you're just going to make mistakes over and over again. And it's better to do that slowly, I think, than it is to rush into it with the hopes that, oh, this is going to solve all of my problems. And I'm going to take 5 grams of psilocybin in a dark room and I'm going to be enlightened on the other side because,
Yeah.
God damn it, I deserve that
Yeah.
and this is the way I get it. Um, Maybe I don't know. I supposedly that works for some people. I've never tried it. I can't speak to it, but I think the intention is important. And the sad thing is, we're often unaware of the intention that's driving things. So, if anything, using ritual as a way of tuning into what it is that we're actually feeling, what our beliefs are, the sort of subconscious, unconscious layers in our body, and beginning to just work with them is like, okay, top layer, I feel numb in my body. Okay, I'm just going to work with that. What's this numbness? What's going on there? Um, oh man, the numbness kind of parted and there was this fucking panic. No wonder I'm numb. Okay, I'll just breathe with that. Let's see if I can sit with the panic enough to build my attention enough that I can take in, I'm sorry, sit with the numbness enough that I can build my attention around the numbness so it's strong enough to hold the panic when it comes up and then I don't have to hide from the panic anymore. I don't, there's a, there's the litany from fear in Dune that I really like. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dune books.
I mean, I know
Uh,
what you're talking about, but I haven't read them.
um, Yeah, I'm just going to have to reference it and people will have to look it up. It's a short little sort of meditative prayer that they teach in the books about fear. I will turn and face my fear and I will let it pass over me and through me. And when my fear is gone, I will turn and look at the path that it's left behind.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. It's
um,
nice.
yeah, it's the Dune books. The movies are good, but the books are, I think, somewhat prophetic. I think there's something spiritual in there. But I'm getting off
Mm.
topic, so forgive me.
No, no, no.
Um, when it comes to ritual, I think of it as a way of creating a container to interact with an energy in order to achieve a certain intent. And it doesn't have to be a strict intent, like winning lotto numbers or the energy to power through my day. It could be to ask questions and receive guidance, or it could be any number of things. And oftentimes, I think if you do get any kind of an answer, it's not necessarily intelligible or sensible, and it can take time to really make sense of it. Um, I was looking back through some of my notes from, 2011, 2012, and I saw some stuff in there that at the time I didn't understand. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, this is the same problems I'm dealing with now, but I'm so much more conscious of them, I think, here, in my 40s than I was in my 30s. And I'm sure in my 50s I'll feel even more conscious of them, and maybe at some point they'll make sense. I don't know. But it's that kind of a thing. Um, it's more about the development of what we are carrying than it is about trying to buy or purchase through ritual interaction something that will be placed into us that will fix a problem that we have.
Mm,
I don't think it really works very well that way, especially not for us. We're so consumer minded that we we see everything as an interaction or as a product to
mm,
put money down and then get product and then put product into whole in soul and feel better for a little bit.
mm.
Um, I don't know. I feel like I've kind of lost the thread, so I'll let you reply.
No, no,
Uh,
that yeah, that was very good. I mean, brings up a lot of questions. I mean, one thing you mentioned about going slow with ritual, it reminded me, I mean, it seems like that will help the mindfulness of it too. And you mentioned specifically kind of mindfulness of like kind of emotions that will be coming up and to be able to gain insight into yourself, like from the awareness of them and not simply running away or something like that. I thought also something you might be saying was that some people, through rushing through or through treating it as a something like a consumer product, they're hoping to do the ritual, and maybe some people in mass are like this or with other religions. They're looking to do the thing without really doing the thing, without really being there and really, what can I say more than being there, but really being there and hoping to get the transformation. You know, that I'll buy the Christmas present for my loved one. I'll give them the Christmas present. I won't really like be present with them, no pun intended, but yeah,
Yeah,
present with them.
it's
I
good.
won't really like put my heart into it, but I'm doing the thing, damn it. And then the relationship should be good and there should be love there. And that's how things are supposed to go. That's what the instruction manual that I scratched up in my head says to do. You know, why isn't it working?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think you hit on a very important thing there that whether we're talking about, ritual interaction with a certain energy or ancestors or whatever it is that you want to work with, um, or you're talking about, the gift you buy for your loved one. Um, in both cases, the thing that makes the difference is you bringing all of yourself to it and letting yourself be touched and impacted and changed by the relationship
Yeah,
instead
yeah,
of trying to resource something out of the relationship or make the relationship look a certain way. So then you can check the box of we are happy and
yeah,
I don't have to actually let you feel me or feel you feeling me or let you
yeah.
feel me feeling you. Like there's a barrier that can be maintained, but we can still have the pretend that we've connected. And
Yeah,
God damn it, why don't
exactly.
you treat me like we've connected? Well, because I haven't
Yeah.
actually felt you this whole time,
Yeah.
you know?
That's very good. Yeah, I'm really afraid of, for example, I'm really afraid of what might actually happen and or of opening up or what I might actually say. And so I'm gonna like set up these barriers, this image, uh and uh and like that's I want that to work. I want
Mhm.
the image instead of the reality, but somehow sort of still hope that I get something of the reality,
Yeah. And
up in
I
me.
think, I think the reality, if we think of, what we're talking about, the reality, and not necessarily the other person, but just the situation itself, like reality wants us to have relationships and wants us to be happy, and so it's gonna give us whatever it can kind of sneak under the door. Like we'll get, and then we'll be like, oh, see, it worked, it was fine. Um, but if we don't open ourselves, then if we continue to close ourselves off and do things performatively, then there's no opening for us to get fed by it. We're not giving anything.
Yeah.
We're trying to
Yeah.
take, and then because we're not giving anything, we can't receive anything. There's no mutuality there. You're starting from nothing, so you're receiving nothing. And
Yeah.
I think that the I probably actually mentioned this on this podcast already. I don't know, you'll have to tell me, but the idea of being on a horse, you can fall off, one side of the horse, you can fall off the other side of the horse, which is, I think, ultimately like a Buddhist middle way kind of a thing. But with ritual, like, or with connection, really, you can fall off one side of like, oh, I'm too closed. I just need to close more. I need more protection. I need to feel safer, more walled off, and then eventually I'll be able to connect in a safe way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But you never do. You just keep building walls and building walls because that's what you know to do. And the
Yeah.
other side is like, I don't need these walls. I'm just going to connect. And that can be very startling, for the person or the energy and for yourself too, because if you genuinely are afraid of that vulnerability, the the road to healing, to proper relationship is not to alienate the part of yourself that's afraid, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
because then it becomes this monster that's lurking and will jump on you at some point and they'll be afraid, "Oh, I thought I got rid of you." What if you can understand, oh, well, I am afraid and I'm afraid to connect with this person. Most of the time I don't even notice it, but sometimes I notice it and I feel a little numb. I feel like I'm not picking up their signals or there's some sort of there's some sort of a wall or a barricade and saying, okay, well, can I if I were to connect with this person in this moment, um, what would come up for me? Is there
Mm.
any fear? Is there any part of me that what part of me wants to be walled off? And building a relationship with that part and trying to help that part feel safer so that then the need for being closed down isn't as strong and you can start to begin to open safely. That's what I mean in ritual about going slowly.
Mm.
It's the same thing whether you're talking to the ancestors or you're talking to I don't know, your wife or whatever it is.
Mm.
Um, I think you can kind of go slowly but respectfully, but by all means go. Don't not go and tell yourself that you're going. I don't know how I got to that from ritual, man. I'm
No, no, no. I think we're totally, I mean, we were taught, I was
yeah.
wondering if ritual is like about, about going forward in life, and which it seems like the dead version of ritual can maybe trick people into or let people think that ritual is about just this mindless repetition.
Mhm.
But that's kind of what I'm thinking. It is something that you repeat, but it's about going forward. So
Yeah. And
it
like
seems to
actually
me.
another example of how ritual can kind of look like anything. That podcast that I sent you where Vervaeke's talking with that guy about his relationship with his own personal daimon, um, that he developed that relationship through journaling.
Yeah.
So he would set a time, he would set a space where he would journal, he would go through the actions of opening the book, getting the
All
pen,
right. Yeah, I didn't
writing
think about that.
down. He
Shit.
he would I think he said it came to him from doing like an parts work, like an internal family systems parts work thing.
Yeah,
So he
exactly.
was he was working with the parts, and then this other spirit came in of his daimon and spoke to him in a different way. And I don't know, maybe you can link to that in the show notes or something if we
Yeah,
remember to
yeah,
do that.
yeah, I will.
I think the podcast was Third Eye Drops, so people can look that up if they want. But that's a ritual. You're ritually going to a book. You're engaging with the energy of whatever part is present from the ISS perspective. You're creating a dialogue, so a relationship, a back and a forth, a space for it to talk, a space for you to talk, a space for it to talk, a space for you to talk. And once you're in that space of ritual, I would have to hazard a guess, a hypothesis that one, Vervaeke is a very active person on a lot of levels. I know he's very intellectual. I know he also does Tai Chi. I'm sure he's got a bunch of other stuff. I don't know much about the man, but he seems very accomplished. He seems a very driven person. And so he's working with these individual parts of himself in this ritual space. And I imagine he's done enough work. He's gone cautiously and carefully enough along the path to reach the point where his own tutelary spirit is able to manifest itself to him and speak to him in a I don't want to say hallucinated, but in his imagination, in the Carl Jung active imagination, you're actively engaging with something
Hmm.
in images or in sensations in the body or
Hmm.
even just in words in a book. It could just be it comes through language. I think that's
Hmm.
valid too. The spirits will speak to us in many ways.
Hmm.
Um, and I see that as a ritual. Journaling can be a ritual if done with that intent. Making a small offering of ash and water to in two small bowls with some incense to your ancestors every morning can be a ritual. Having a cup of tea can be a ritual, and you can do that with the intent of I'm going to start my day happy and feeling good, or you can do that with the intent of like this is my sacred space, and I am opening it for communion with the divine around this mug for the next 20 minutes on my patio in my bathrobe, you know? And I think a lot of people do that somewhat unconsciously, but they do, I think they do treat it that way. And that's why when they lose it, they can get really, I didn't have my moment this morning, you know?
Mm,
Um, and then, I think addictions are sort of like maybe the dark side of that, in that
right.
they become a repetitive behavior to engage and try and get a certain energy,
Right.
try and create a certain result, but you're engaging in something that isn't designed to give you that result in a way that is respectful of your entire system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's sort of the diminishing returns of addiction, the increased usage of the drug, is comes from the neural structure of ritual, of approaching a thing, but it's again, it's done with an intent to fill a hole as opposed to express a relationship. And I'm not sure you could
Right.
approach drugs with the sense of expressing a relationship. I wouldn't go so far as to say like if you smoke crack with the right intention, you won't get addicted to it. I think that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, but on smaller cases, like a cup of tea, I think it can go, okay, I think it can go both ways. I think even invoking the ancestors, I think could go the wrong way, although I don't think you would get good results. I think at this point, especially for somebody in the West, you probably just wouldn't get any results. You'd be like, well, this is stupid. This isn't working. It's like, well, okay, like maybe, maybe it's doing exactly what the best thing is for you, given what you're bringing, or maybe it's just a question of time and patience and refining of your internal intent to the point and your internal belief of what you're capable of and what the world is capable of providing with you. You can sort of refine that over time through actions as well. So I just kind of went all over the place there.
No, no, no. I don't think you are. I mean, I think this is all very relevant. Um, I mean, two ways I'm thinking about this, and you touched on this, is that like there's like formal, seems like there's formal ritual, and there's also sort of living as, I don't know if you could say in the ritual spirit or, but living mindfully, slowly, with intent, with wisdom, and yeah, without, yeah, where it seems like there is a way of looking at them as regular life and ritual as separate and different, and also as on a continuum.
Hmm.
And one thing I've been wondering is that you're touching on like specific objects, sort of, if that's the right word, of ritual of like ancestors, which I think that's particularly appropriate for Westerners. I mean, I remember hearing on a podcast that like most people don't know past three generations their family, and that seems almost disturbing to me. That's like those people produced you and you literally have no idea about them at all. It's kind of weird. It's like we're just floating on the surface and just kind of looking around, and that's what reality is to us. But
Yeah.
but yeah, and also you've mentioned like ash, water, even with the morning tea, it's like that's water, and there's some herb there and
Hmm.
things. And yeah, and also mentioning like with the caffeine, there's a little bit of an altered state of consciousness, and but like sort of a soft way, not as much like hard drugs or like the like psychedelic experience or something like that. Um, but yeah, I don't know if there's anything about that, the dichotomy or the continuation between formal ritual and everyday life that you wanted to talk about, or about the specific objects, if that's the right word, of ritual.
Hmm. Well, I think the continuum versus the dichotomy that you brought up is really interesting because and I can touch on the other thing too, but that really kind of caught my mind because it's I can see both being true, right? Like if you go into, I'll just speak of my own experience, you go into an intense fire ritual to transform something in your life, and you have a whole community of people doing it, and you build a huge bonfire, and you set up all the things you're supposed to set up, and there's, at least in the tradition I was in, there's drumming, and there's this energy fills the space, and you go one by one, and you speak to the ancestors, and you make your prayer, and you make your offering, and you do the circuits, and you come back to the center where the people are all gathered, and you're welcomed back. Like, that's a huge ritual. That is not a cup of tea. That is not, I do the sign of the cross when I walk through the door to feel safe when I'm going out in the world, or whatever. But but it's just a bigger version. So they're distinctly different, and a proper ritual can kind of look like anything, but involves a lot of planning, a lot of intent, a lot of creativity, a lot of unknown. It's a whole event. It can take a day or two or three, depending on how big it can get very big. Um, and you've got, like, even mass is like, what is, like, an hour and a half or something. It's obviously, it's been a while. Um, but they're not opposites.
Mm,
It is a continuum, but it can be, if I mean, on any gradient, if you take one side and you look at the other side, it looks like a polar relationship, and it is, but that's not to say that one isn't the same as the other. If you're this, fundamentally, if you're hot or you're cold, it's still temperature.
mm,
Hot and cold aren't at war. You're not trying to pick hot or cold.
mm.
If you're trying to go into ritual, when I say start small, I mean, the one end of the spectrum, the smaller. So my sides are, I'm thinking left to right, but it's got me mirrored here.
Oh,
Um, um, but starting somewhere small, and kind of finding your right place to it, um, is much more important than trying to create some massive thing, I think. Um, but yeah, that's not to say that there's a distinct difference. No, no more so than, like, a kid selling lemonade on the street to passersby is any less of a business than, Amazon. Like, they're
mm,
both businesses.
mm,
You can call them both by that term.
mm,
There's not a dichotomy there, but there is a dichotomy. And
mm.
I think that does. So then the other point was around the actual items. Can you
Hmm.
can you refresh that for me?
Yeah. So, like, I mean, it seems like this also helps to delineate a distinction between formal ritual and everyday life, maybe, although maybe you can structure your life so that it is more like formal ritual. But yeah, is there value to, like, for the West or for specific individuals or whatnot, for yeah, specific yeah, items or attention in ritual, like with water or fire, ash, or like ancestors and things like that.
Yeah. Hmm. That's more complicated, because for items to be imbued with symbolic power requires some sort of tradition or lineage. For
Mm,
the same reason that, like, if you sneak into the back of the church late at night and guzzle a bunch of communion wine, you're not immediately lifted into connection with Jesus Christ.
yeah,
You eat some. It's not gonna work that way.
yeah.
Um, but that being said, there is also, again, we've got another sort of a gradient going here of,
Mm,
like, yes, it's not that, but that's not to say that. you cannot imbue things with the meaning of their own yourself. That you can't sort of create an agreement with yourself of like, okay, this means, when I light this stick of incense in this space, if I have cultivated this certain attitude, it means I am grounded and opening to a connection with my ancestors.
Mm.
Um, you could say every time I go to this special stone I've set aside and I take this other stone and I knock on it in a certain way, that's me with a certain attitude. That's me connecting with my ancestors. Sure.
Mm.
You could say, my ancestors, it feels to me like they want me to pour water on the ground. Should I do that? Or I don't, maybe I should put a bowl down. You have to kind of negotiate all of that with yourself anyway.
Mm.
And the traditions and the lineages are are the results of people doing that for a very long time before you. So they carry a lot of good, a lot of mistakes have been made and accounted for, and they are safer in that regard, and they are faster and more reliable because we on our own as individuals, if we're even individuals, but as individuals like we think we are in the West, we're pretty dumb. We don't understand these things. And so there's going to be a lot of trial and error. And you have to sort of find the general, you would have to find some sort of a balance between that of like, ultimately it comes down to what calls you the most. If someone feels called to go back to the church and attend mass on a regular basis, and the structure of that ritual speaks to them, and they leave feeling more connected to something divine and ready to um, be charitable to the poor, and all the fruits of the spirit that they talk about in the Bible that are the result of a healthy relationship with the sacred. These fruits develop in your system, and you're able to go manifest them in the world. Like, great, then do that. And if you need to engage with stone statues and spit alcohol at them and offer all kinds of things to them, and that speaks to your soul, then do that. But if you do that and it doesn't speak to your soul, like, don't do that. And it's really, I think, ultimately about learning. It's like learning a language you already speak. Like, some part of you already speaks it, and the chances are that part's very young and needs education, and you need to learn what it has to tell you. And that's sort of how it's almost backwards. Like, that's how that part gets educated, is it tells you things and then you process it, and you try things out. And then you sort of have this back and forth with it. But until you start taking that relationship seriously, you can try a bunch of stuff and it won't really, take root. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it is a continuum from one sense of you can do whatever you want with whatever objects you want for whatever intent you want, and you can get a result of some sort. If you combine those ingredients in the correct way, you should get some sort of result. If you didn't get a result, play around with the ingredients a little more.
Mm.
But it's a lot, like I said, it's a lot easier when there's some sort of a structure that has been built by people over time that you enter into and partake of and give back to, and sort of you become one of the ones who's holding that through time.
Yeah.
You know, there's a power to that you're not going to get, hopefully, although maybe on your own, just doing small little actions. I mean, who's to say? I don't know.
In the West, besides Catholic Mass, do you know of any like ritual traditions? I mean, I guess there's little things like Freemasons or like sports teams maybe have certain things. And interestingly, I think superstitions also, like in baseball, are sort of like a version of this. But anyway, yeah, do you know of anything like that?
Um, um, I mean, if we're talking about in the West as like in our current culture, I would say there's a fair amount. I mean, any organized religion is going to have its rituals. One of my stronger lineages that I've worked with is Zen Buddhism, and there's not a lot of extra trappings and things, but their rituals are very, you go into the Zendo, you bow, you don't wear your shoes. That signifies a certain thing. They light incense. There's usually a statue of the Buddha that's meant to represent a certain thing. It creates this environment that helps you step into the energy that it's there for you. Sort of, I mean, Buddhism, everything gets kind of wonky because there's no actual self to anything. If you enter into that ontology, it gets a little wonky. So I'm not trying to get too off in that direction. But as far as, or any other tradition or any of this sort of current, indigenous ways and means of the different tribes, um, the Native American traditions, sweat lodges. I have a friend who is, I don't believe he's Native American, but he's been taken in by the tradition, and he's done, I'll say acquaintance. He's a nice guy. I really like him. We just don't hang out very often. But I believe he's done the Sundance thing where you sort of get pierced and you hang from the tree. So that's a very intense ritual that I suppose you could do on your own, but I doubt would have the same effect.
Mm,
I'm sure there are people out there still practicing Malidoma's lineage, his teachings. Um, could not exactly tell you how to get in touch with them, but you could probably find them on the internet.
mm,
On the other hand, if you go into if you're talking about the West as, the sort of European tradition, it is kind of a sad state of affairs because we have Christianity, and for the most part, that's our ritual tradition. And there are various branches of it from Protestantism to Orthodoxy to Catholicism to the Quakers and sort of the New Thought and all of that stuff. Christian Scientists, Mormons. You in and then if you want to kind of go a little bit further out and expand the West beyond just Eurocentrism, you've also got the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Islam, and the Kabbalah, the Sufis, the different branches of that. Um, but we don't have much of an indigenous tradition in the West, and I think we as a culture we lost that to to Rome, to the empire at first, and to Christianity via Rome, the sort of enforcement of the Christian faith upon the masses, and St. Patrick in Ireland and all of that. And it's a hard nut to crack as to say either that Christianity took something that we needed, meaning the indigenous tradition was better and we should have held to that and we would feel more nourished and we would have more roots and we would be healthier as a culture, or to say that Christianity is better. It connects with something divine, it connects with something universal, as opposed to the individual, villages or tribes or cultures. It's something that they all can connect to.
mm.
It's more central to the hub of the wheel, and comes down into individual ways, as opposed to this group has this way and this one, and then they can go to war and everybody kind of fights and nobody ever actually gets to that center.
Yeah.
So there's an element of that, but I also think there's something about what we normally think of as Christianity that is more the ghosts of the Roman Empire, than it is what Jesus Christ brought to the world. Colonization, missionary work, kidnapping of children, forced conversions. Christ
Mm,
didn't teach any of that. You know,
mm,
that's not what Christianity is about. And so I think there's a split in Western culture that goes back to that sort of the unholy trinity. I don't know. The sort of mixture of indigenous belief, Christianity, and the Roman Empire, or just empire in general, the concept of a superior race and of colonizing and of conquering and of spreading my culture over other cultures and suppressing them and raising up mine. And like
Mm,
there's some sort of a lack there that I think we're trying to heal,
mm,
maybe going about the wrong way. I'm not really sure what the answer is to that. That's the nut I'm talking about.
mm,
As far as like rituals in the West, the only other thing that exists is kind of the Western occult tradition, which
mm,
is I don't know much about, but there's Aleister Crowley's kind of the main figure there.
mm,
Um, Complicated character.
mm,
Um, not probably not the cleanest person, spiritually speaking, but I don't know. I can't speak to it. I can't speak to him. I don't know much about him, so I won't say much either way, other than he doesn't have a good reputation.
mm,
Um, but he was sort of one of the central figures of this occult revival in the early to mid 1900s.
mm,
Probably going back further of occultism and pentagrams and summoning demons and calling on the voices of angels to inspire you. And there are some ritual elements in Western culture that have sort of lain under the surface and are often called occult, which means hidden. You
mm,
can't see them easily. You have to go in and learn their language. Um,
mm,
and that, has some reputations. I think a lot of that comes from Crowley and sort of the reputation he cultivated as the great beast, as the dark magician.
mm,
There's some arguments as to where that may have come from, but that's a whole other topic. But
mm,
all of that is to say, like there is an element of ritual tradition in the West, um, and the Crowley version of it. I mean, Crowley himself pulled from Tarot, from Kabbalah, from old grimoires, from Solomonic magic of supposedly going back to King Solomon, so it's old Jewish magic. Um, he translated some stuff from the Taoists. He translated the Tao Te Ching. He translated the I Ching. He
mm,
did some other stuff. So he was already very syncretic, very
mm,
pulled from a lot of things.
mm,
So one of the things he pulled from is this sort of Western tradition, but I wouldn't. I have not seen much in that regard that calls me to engage in it. We'll see. I don't ever want to. I always take care when I make these pronouncements of like, yes, that is not for me, because I don't know. I don't know where my path will lead me, but I don't feel an engagement with a lot of that stuff is safe necessarily.
mm,
And the current my very limited understandings of the current culture around all of that work is not something I'm interested in stepping into either. It seems rather gone down a dark path if I were to, talk about going too quickly and not really understanding
mm.
um,
Wait.
the
Mm,
fruits of your intentions. Yeah.
mm.
But what do I know? I don't know. People have their own experience. Maybe it's exactly what they need. And I don't want this to be a judgment. So it's just you asked a question about modern, Western ritual, and I'm trying to lay out all the cards in my deck on the table and talk about them as best as I can. So
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think
yeah.
that was a good comprehensive answer.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. Um, see if I have, yeah, I just like it's something I struggle with myself of how to engage ritual in my own life in a fruitful way. I know when I first worked with Malidoma, the reason I sort of stepped away from that work and the reason, I think the last time I saw him was 2014. And so I hadn't seen him for, a good 7 years before he passed, was I engaged in a lot of that work. And although when I first introduced it was first, first was introduced to it, I had some very profound effects from the rituals he put us through.
Mm.
The more deeply I got involved with it and the more I brought it into my own life as something I was trying to cultivate, the everything felt empty. It felt made up. It felt
Mm.
fake. It felt I wasn't really getting responses that seemed to mean anything.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm doing this wrong or 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 if it's not for me or what. So I that was sort of my reason for stepping away from it. And only recently in the past few months maybe have I started feeling a call to return to it, and in very small ways, very, very small ways, little offerings of ash to the ancestors, a little bit of water to the ancestors. And I have to credit my sister for that. She's studying with a student of Malidoma's and has been engaged in that work more directly than I think I ever was, because she's been working with this person for a while, a few years now, I think, kind of directly. And I'm very happy for her. And she's sort of helped bring that back to life for me,
Mm.
um, such that I can engage with it in small ways and kind of feel like I'm not on my own, wandering in the forest by myself, trying to make sure I don't get eaten by a bear. Like at least I have some sort of thread connecting me. Yeah.
Do you think that's some of the reason? I don't know how much you want to get into your experience, but that you were trying to do it alone. It wasn't in a community or something. That's why it wasn't working, wasn't resonating.
It could be actually. That's a very insightful question. I met Malidoma when I was still living in New York. This would have been 2010, and my interactions with him partially fueled my move out to the West Coast. So there was
Mm.
that was sort of he was an influence on that particular move. And when I came out here to the Pacific Northwest, I found a group of people who were already beginning to engage in his teachings. One of them, I won't name any of them because I don't know if they're well. You'll see. I won't name them for reasons that will become clear.
Mm.
But one of them had trained with Malidoma and gone. He had like a 2 year training that he would run people through to help them be able to run rituals. And it was something I always wanted to take, but I also it never felt like the right time to do it. So that never happened for me. But I had a friend who had gone through that training and was trying to develop some sense of a community out here. And so for me to come out here and find them just as they're starting, I was like, oh, what a nice coincidence. This is great. I just got this whole thing here to meet me. And we built a community, very small. Um, we had a little bit of a mailing list that we would send stuff to. We brought Malidoma out, I want to say 3 or 4, maybe 5 times to do divinations out here, give talks, hold ritual. We organized the people to work with him, and he would come out and do his thing, do his shaman thing, and create the space. And it was really great. But that community kind of fell apart. I think it was a lot of energy to hold, and I don't think that we all quite knew what we were getting into when we started it. And then by the time it started, generating energy and starting to grow, I was like, oh my God, this is a little overwhelming. I'm not ready for this. And the main guy that had been holding the connection to Malidoma was like, I can't keep holding this. I got to step back. And then everything we kind of carried on a little bit after that, but without anybody having that direct instruction and sort of initiation into the teachings of community, of ritual. um,
Mm.
it sort of fell apart. And I think there was something about that group that like our energy was very cohesive. And then once pieces started sort of falling away, I think the whole thing couldn't maintain itself.
Mm.
So that would line up with the space between when I was following it and then when it sort of dropped away from me would be the time when that community kind of fell apart.
Mm.
There is a center in upstate New York, the East Coast Village. It's still active, so people can check out their website. I think it's eastcoastvillage.org. But if you just type in East Coast Village, they'll be able to find it. And they still hold some events up there. That's kind of a central hub for some of the work and the people. involved in that work. But it's in upstate New York. It was hard enough for me to get up there when I lived in Brooklyn. Living out here, it's a plane ride and a car drive. And so as much as I could go out and partake, and I did go out for a few events, it was difficult to call that my community.
Hmm.
And so especially when I had the community here in the Northwest. So when the community here kind of fell apart, I wasn't going to be flying back and forth to the East Coast regularly enough for that to count.
Hmm.
And yeah, it did kind of fall apart. So yeah, thank you. I hadn't really put those two, aligned those two things in that way, but I do think that was something that influenced the falling away of that element of my practice. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad it's coming back in a small way. And there's no larger community, but there is still a little bit of like interaction with you and your sister, kind of doing some of those practices. I mean, you just in a much more small way than her, but still, you're not alone. I mean,
Yeah.
doing it. So
Yeah. 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 I'd have to actually talk with her about that, but I do think that it might be her connection has renewed mine, and that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it in that way. But yeah, she's connected to somebody who's very steeped in ritual, and um, I have places that I could connect back into, but it would have to feel right, and it doesn't yet. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's something I think you've said a few times about sort of. And it makes sense because we are talking about sort of connecting with the world and connecting with your deeper self, sort of, if we can say that. And yeah, yeah, it seems like you're talking about intuition or something, and it has to feel right. You have to make effort. It's not going to just happen on its own, but at the same time, you have to kind of go slow and be open to messages or yeah, information that you're getting too from however you want to say it ontologically from the world, from your unconscious or whatever. So,
yeah,
yeah, that makes a
yeah,
lot of sense.
yeah. Because like again, you don't want to. If there is a calling there, you don't want to shut it down,
Yeah.
and you don't want to go so fast that you hurt yourself. You want to be respectful of the fact that you really don't know what you're doing. And even if you were in a big tradition, you still wouldn't quite know what you were doing. You would still have to feel your way through it. You would just have people who would be able to um, probably direct you on your way a little more quickly because there's some mistakes they would be familiar with, and they would be able to say, "Hey, I think you should probably look at it this way," and be like, "Oh, wow, I didn't think of that." They can kind of align you a little more correctly.
Yeah, and that seems like yeah, such a strength of yeah, having good community, good leaders or guides and everything.
Yeah, but we don't have a lot of that. So sometimes we got to make do with what we can and hope that our efforts will generate something. If we start walking towards that hopeful future, maybe it will start walking towards us too.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I like that. And
yeah,
that's sort of what I'm and Vervaeke talks about how like for X for anything, any variable, that's important in life. You want to have somewhere ostensibly in your society where you can go for that. But where do we go for wisdom? We don't really have. I mean, we have universities for knowledge, but yeah, where do we go for wisdom? Where people don't generally, necessarily go to the church or to the monastery, or like have a particular teacher or something like that. So I'm hoping yeah, that's kind of what I'm interested in with this podcast and this sort of uh, just whatever this podcast and whatever my life is trying to be, not to sound too sort of, you know, loosey goosey or something, but like yeah, that's kind of what I'm going for with the Ben Omtad, the open-minded thought and discussion. I do think in yeah, deep discourse or dialogos or whatever, Vervaeke uses that term. Um, we start to sort of produce or to become in connection with something deeper and there's starts to become guidance hopefully community, wisdom, and all that stuff to help us to know deeply, to feel through life, and to gain some ultimately some equanimity, and start to bring more of the good, the true, and the beautiful into not your life specifically, but yeah, life. So
Mhm. Like as a channel,
yeah,
as a yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think I mean, I think you're doing what you can. I think we're all doing what we can. You're and just keep trying, look at the results, see how they're going. If they're not going well, make a change. See if we can ask for guidance about what needs to be improved or adjusted. Adjust those, take action. That in and of itself is a ritual. Taking action to change something in our life is a ritual and
Mm,
is definitely hard for a lot of us in the West, myself included.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, me too.
yeah, and take risks, take chances, you know, um, try things with with the respect and humility that like, okay, this might not be the right thing, but I'm going to keep trying, you know. Um, yeah, yeah, but that's sort of been my attitude with my newsletter that I've been putting out. It's just like I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep this up for a while and see if it at least becomes a ritual of development for myself. And then it is up to, fill in the blank, God, the universe, whatever, the ancestors, as far as whether I produce anything that is of use for other people.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like a great description. But before we go, do you want to just kind of plug that and kind of tell people about your
Oh,
newsletter, The Kind Knife?
yeah, sure. Yeah, I got a Substack going up. I think funnily enough, week 10 goes out tomorrow. And I say funnily enough because it's got I mentioned Malidoma in it, and I just wrote it a few days ago before we decided what we were going to talk about here. So it's kind of a weird
That's
coincidence.
funny.
But yeah, you can just go to www.thekindknife.com. The kind as in caring, knife as in the thing you cut yourself free of bindings with. Not the thing you stab people with, the thing you free yourself with. That's why it's kind. Thekindknife.com, and that'll link you right to the Substack. And it's free. I'm taking donations because I would love to be supported by this work. But it's free for now. If I get enough paid subscribers, maybe the subscription will come with some bonus materials. I'm still kind of working that out. I'm just trying to keep the regular publishing going for now.
Hmm.
But I do one on Sunday. That's sort of a more serious one, and I do one on Friday. That is an attempt at something humorous, something poetical, something fictional, something a little fun, a little lighter, for people to kind of take into the weekend is the intention there. So yeah, check it out, kindknife.com. Everybody's welcome, no charge. So far the comments are available for everybody. Unless I start getting some bad comments, I'm going to keep those open. And it's my whole intention of it is like I said, to develop my own thought and to get it out in the world, and then ideally for there to be a community, for it to create some level of place where people can feel safe, and connect, and sort of, if there is any interest in the ideas I'm sharing, that that's the place they can connect and discuss them. And if there's not, then that's fine. I will continue to develop them myself, and hopefully God will develop a use for them at some point. And that's out of my hands. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that sounds very good. So
yeah,
on that note, we'll find continue next week, or I mean, in the next few weeks with something else with to kind of develop our guidance, wisdom, knowledge, different kinds of knowledge in the world.
sounds good.
Sounds good.
I look forward to it.